Thank you for tuning in today to I Retire for Him, the voice and resource of the Retirement Reformation, online at retirementreformation.org. Did you know that when you retire, your calling, it doesn't retire? If you got a pulse, God's got a purpose for you. And this is what Bruce said in our last podcast. It's got to be a part of our new entry every time, that meaning and purpose wipes out the loneliness in your life. You've tuned into I Retire for Him, the voice and resource of the Retirement Reformation, an organization dedicated to you, the retiree who loves Jesus and wants purpose all of your days, especially the ones ahead of you, and you don't want to be stuck with loneliness. Bruce Bruinsma joins us today. As a founder of the Retirement Reformation, he's here to walk with you as he walks through retirement. I'm your host, Jim Brangenberg. Check us out online, please. retirementreformation.org, retirementreformation.org. And check us out on Facebook, too, just under the same name, Retirement Reformation. You know, seniors are lonely, church pastors are lonely, business leaders are lonely, too. All this loneliness. And what can we do about it? Today, we finish up a 3-part series about putting our retired selves into action to eliminate the loneliness in our retired friends, our church pastors, and our local leaders of businesses and organizations. All this loneliness, and the solution has been there all along. The RJFFA is here to the rescue, the Retired Jesus-Following Folks of America. Bruce, with all this loneliness out there, we've got business people. Can seniors help eliminate loneliness, and business leaders too, Bruce?
Well, I think two things to recognize, that amongst the 48 million Christ followers who are 60 and older, I don't know exactly what percentage of those come out of the business world, but I would expect that it would say significant percentage. So for this conversation, let's just say it's 50%. So that would mean that there's only 24 million people who have business experience, whether it be as a worker in a business, as it be as an entrepreneur, whatever it be in a business relationship, but that they were, in one form or another, they were related to the business world. That's in contrast to the direct vocational ministry world. And now they have transitioned, that's the word I wanted. They have transitioned from that business world to what the world calls retirement. And some of the issues that they are faced with that create loneliness are ones that other business people and those who are in ministry can come alongside to be of great assistance and to help them define meaning and purpose. Now, let's talk about some of the characteristics of those people. First of all, they're used to working.
Mm-hmm. Hard,
and whatever. They're used to working. And so one of the things that attracted them to quote unquote retirement was the fact that the work they were going to do was going to change. Now, for many of them, the thought was it's just going to go away. Well, that's not true. We always work at something, but that they transition. So they're all used to working. Probably a third of you who are listening, who fit into that category, were used to being in some role of leadership. Something that you did that provided direction or support or encouragement or activity that took the business organization that you were in to a different place, a new level, or solved a problem. So that's been the skill set that you have developed and that you've been a part of. There's then another piece to the business folks who were the entrepreneurs or the business owners or the business executives of various firms. And you were used to leading in everything that you did. You were used to waking up with the tensions and the pressures that it takes for the decisions that you were going to make. For those of you in that middle category of giving leadership to a department or an organization, you woke up every morning wondering, who's going to quit today? How many people do I have to hire? So all the tensions that go along with that. And for those of you that were the workers in those businesses, you woke up in the morning wondering, is the business that I'm in really going to survive? Or is there another role that I can play? Or is there another job that I can get in a related business or in a business where my skill set will work? So regardless of where you were in that chain of command, if you wish, or that area, there was tension and there was fear, but that was something that you lived with for a long period of time.
All right, so
all
that's
by way of saying, when you transition from that into the world of quote unquote retirement, you hope that tension will go away. But when it does, there is a huge hole of what is going to replace it in your spiritual, your emotional, and your physical growth that's going to take place. I learned, and this was reaffirmed over the last week or so, that the average age of retirement, Jim, is in the country now is about 57 or maybe a little less. So we think of those in ministry, it's usually more in the 67 to 70 range, and that's kind of what we talk about, but 57. So if you've got 30 years after age 60, and you in fact do retire at 57, as a matter of fact, I talked to somebody 2 days ago, they retired at 54. This longevity issue is absolutely huge, and what it leads to is more opportunity for loneliness to rear its ugly head.
So we got lonely business owners and leaders. Okay, we've got those people. They're already lonely leading at the top because everybody's expecting something from them, but hardly everybody asks, hey, what can I do for you? And then we got those same business leaders who are retired, who are looking for meaning and purpose. How do we get those people connected, Bruce?
Well, first of all, is the realization amongst them that there is more after now. Because they are people that are used to planning and doing and so on, they typically will have two things. They'll have a bucket list and they'll have a honey-do list. All the things that, they committed or wanted to be able to do for their family or their spouse or their home that they haven't done, so they got to get that done. And then they got this bucket list that has travel or other kinds of things in it, and you kind of got to get that out of the way. Once you have that out of the way, now you're left with that nothingness, which leads to loneliness. And so when the 48 million Christ followers, when you say, what are you going to do in retirement? And they come up with some version of nothing, that is the open door. That is the key that will lead to, or the pathway that will lead to, eventually to loneliness. Nothing and loneliness are definitely connected.
When we come back, we're going to talk with Donny Vanker from lifeaction.org. We're going to go deeper on this conversation. And then we'll finish up at segment 3, specific things that you could do as seniors to walk alongside business leaders. We're going to review some of the things you can do to walk alongside pastors who are lonely. And we'll finish up with some things you can do to walk alongside your fellow seniors who are suffering from loneliness. You're listening to I Retire For Him. We'll be right back.
Recreating Retirement is an interactive small group study helping you to move from nothing to what's next. You can join us on Wednesdays at 6 p.m. East Coast time on Facebook Live. Our goal for this study is to provide a group setting for interaction and new ideas while leading you through a first step in your journey from retirement to reformation. Here's the big idea. During the next 5 years, 5,000 small groups will experience this journey of discovery in churches and faith-based organizations across the country. Is your church a place where recreating retirement needs to be planted? Join us online to experience the study or prepare to lead a small group at your church or ministry. Email us at contactus@retirementreformation.org or go to our website at retirementreformation.org. That's retirementreformation.org.
Hey, welcome back to I Retire For Him. Bruce, every second segment of every show, you always bring on an incredible guest. And as we've been talking about pastors being lonely and a solution for seniors ministering to pastors, who'd you bring on today?
Well, we've got a special guest today. It's someone who's become a really good friend over the last year, and his name is Donny Vanker. Donny is the CEO of a ministry that's had an impact for lots and lots of years called Life Action. And so, Donny, welcome. We're so glad that you're with us for just a few minutes. And So glad that we can connect on topics that will be of interest to those who tune into this podcast.
Thank you, Bruce. Thank you, Jim. Excited to be here.
Oh, we're glad to have you, Donny.
So, Donny, I got just a couple of questions. The first one that starts with, God used some pretty unusual circumstances to direct you to the role that you have at Life Action now. Can you just give just a quick executive summary of the pathway that he had you on to bring you to the place in ministry where you are now?
Sure. It was one that took me all over the country. I went to college at Wheaton College. I met my wife there in the area. We got married. I wanted to go into pastoral ministry, actually. I was registered for classes at the seminary and ended up going into the financial world for a little bit. Then into commercial construction, all while we were looking at joining some different mission agencies. When my third son was born, he was born without any functioning kidneys, actually. He was on dialysis from day 5 of life. And it upended our world entirely. It's a long story. He survived. He just turned 18. He's doing great.
Wow.
But in the meantime, yeah, first transplant was when he was 2.5. Second actually was when he was 7.5. So it was quite the journey. But in the meantime, we had to shut the business down. And it was in that context that the Lord actually brought me into pastoral ministry. We worked with a church out in Seattle for 4 years, then with another church in Michigan for 3. Then the Lord took me back into the business world. So I worked for a human performance company. It was a conglomerate of businesses. Mostly did work with pro Olympic athletes, but also a lot of work with folks with neurological disabilities, spinal cord injuries, cerebral palsy, stroke victims, TBIs. People came from all over the world for it. And we had a variety of brick and mortar facilities and a few nonprofits and gear and apparel companies and supplement companies and all kinds of things like that. And did that for 7 years. And we lived down in South Florida for 5 of those. And we really felt like the Lord, through a variety of circumstances, was calling us back into vocational ministry, not necessarily in the pastorate work, directly working with the church. So we didn't know what that was going to look like. And my mother-in-law, who she grew up in Southwest Michigan, and she had been cared for. She was widowed about 27 years ago now, a long time ago. And there was a ministry called Life Action that they used to work for here. And it was really it was very kind of them. They had left Life Action, which was already a national ministry back then. And he had gone to the business world and then pastoral care. And when he died, it had been 7 years removed, but the staff at Life Action just continued to remember her. It wasn't, they not only just, sent flowers, at the funeral, and some of the staff, showed up and cared for them. They also did it on her birthday, which is easy to forget. And then they did it again the next year on the anniversary of Rich's death, and then again on her birthday. And they just kept loving on her and caring for her for over 20 years. And so when we found out that Life Action needed a new CEO, the CEO that had been there for in that role for 30 years with the ministry for almost 46 years, and they're looking for somebody. And when we saw the role that they were looking for, I actually think I've developed some of the skill sets they were looking for over the years. And when we saw what they did, and from a mission and messaging standpoint, and just how they cared for one another, we thought, man, this would be a fantastic fit for our family. So that's how we came here, and couldn't be happier.
Well, the reason that you're such a great fit is that you're very comfortable in the role of envisioning what's next, and then the activity that needs to take place to bring a team together to foment change. And one of the things that we realize in the retirement reformation is that all of us, as we enter into that 30 years of what the world calls retirement, there's a couple things that happen. Number one, a lot of stuff changes. And number two, that events happen that interfere with the plans that we have. And so I just wondered if you had some words of wisdom for our audience dealing with how to think about, the fact that change is going to come, and how it is that we can think about it in a way that will take us to where God calls us to, and that will take us to a place of meaning and purpose. So if you could just share just some of out of all your experiences, just a few words to answer that very simple question. And that's a joke, by the way.
You're right. Yeah. Well, I'll tell you a couple of things even that I've been able to experience at Life Action. So the ministry is 53 years old now, and we do a lot of events in churches, over 7,000 churches, multi-day experiential events, and we walk people through a practical application of the gospel. And one of our primary speakers is named Steve Canfield, and he has been doing this for 48 years. And he is incredibly effective still today. And we have some of the other people that are on staff that have been with the ministry. Dan Puckett has been serving with the ministry. He's in his 80s now, and he's, I think, 47 years he's continued to serve with us. And I've got Elville Alba, who's been with the ministry, I think, for like 46 years. And I took a little hiatus when he was working with a church as a pastor, and now he mostly works with pastors. Some of the people that we've actually recruited on our staff to help us have retired from their vocational ministry. They were doing pastors or missionaries or doing different things. And I've watched them, and the pace is different and the expectations are different. However, the amount of wisdom that they have is incredibly valuable. And when they're willing to embrace the realities of change, and I've watched them and had the conversations with them, and they've told me, they said, Donny, change is hard. Mm-hmm. And when you haven't changed for a long time, it makes it exponentially harder. However, change is intrinsically related to growth. And that's part of life. That's how you define something. That's how you know scientifically that something is alive, is that it grows and develops. So change should be expected in this life. And we all like the change that we choose. We don't always like change that's forced upon us.
That's the understatement of the day. Donny, before we run out of time today, Bruce and I have been talking about pastors being lonely. It's a lonely spot. Speak to our audience, mostly retired folks that are looking for ways to eliminate loneliness in themselves, but to be able to take their more available lives than they've ever had in their world and be able to minister to their pastor by helping them not be lonely. How can our senior listeners be a minister to the pastor to help him or her to not be so lonely?
Oh man, I'm going to tell you what, if you want to do something that will be an absolute incredible blessing to somebody it plays an important role in your life, who is often very lonely and often has nobody that they can trust, where they can be vulnerable with, where they can learn and grow and develop, those are your pastors. And if I can inspire you and encourage you to do one thing, it would be to call your pastor or write a letter to your pastor, not giving them advice. Nobody actually likes unasked for advice, probably no matter how old you are, right? So not giving them advice, not doing anything except just to thank them and encourage them. Just find something that they do that improves your life. And I'm telling you, you might be the only person that genuinely encourages them this week, and they need it, because we all need it. So I strongly encourage you to do that. I'm sure that there's stuff that they need to work on, and as you've built up that trust and you've given them courage where they need it, that's going to open up opportunities for you to give them wisdom where they probably also need it, but aren't necessarily asking for it yet. So the best thing you can do, the thing that's going to be most life-giving is to bring that encouragement and joy to the pastors and the rest of the staff and their spouses. Mm-hmm. For sure.
That's really good. So if one of our listeners wants to connect with Life Action for just understanding programmatically some of the things you're doing, where there might be a revival that's going on, a pastoral retreat that they could help send their pastor to, help with marriage enrichment. What's the best way for someone to connect with Life Action, just to see what's going on and see how they could plug in or receive benefit?
Absolutely. Lifeaction.org is where you can go, and you can see all of the events. You can sign up to get our newsletters and prayer journals that we have. We've got different devotional studies. We've got incredible resources, even for your grandkids. We have audio resources that help walk them through our messaging in really incredible ways. And I will say this, one of the things that we are really looking at, and you can pray for us, is how can we make sure in all of these churches that we go to is helping them with senior programming, senior focused programming, because there's just tremendous opportunity for us as we're going to be able to bless and encourage the seniors that are in the churches as we go. But lifeaction.org, that's where you want to go.
And we'll support you, Donny, as long as that senior programming involves getting those seniors involved with the young people and passing on wisdom to the next generation, because too many churches focus on senior programming to get them to hang out with each other so they can just grow old and die together. And we have got to fix that in the church here in America. And I'll step off my soapbox. Donny Vanker with lifeaction.org. Thanks for being on I Retire for Him this afternoon. And Bruce, great guest once again. We'll be right back with more on I Retire for Him.
Our work on this earth doesn't end when the paycheck stops. God calls us to be faithful for a lifetime. Whether you're looking forward to retirement or you're already there, our all-small group study, Recreating Retirement, will help you understand, engage, and activate what God has for you in this fourth quarter of life. Join Retirement Reformation founder Bruce Bruinsma as you consider your past, strengths, spiritual gifts, and your passions, and how they all come together as the call God has for you in these years. Connect with us on our online community group at facebook.com/Retirement Reformation, Wednesdays at 6 p.m. Eastern, or if you'd like to bring Recreating Retirement to your church, email us at contactus@retirementreformation.org. Are you ready to start your life-changing journey today?
Hey, welcome back to I Retire for Him, as we're talking about loneliness, but not loneliness in you guys. We're talking about loneliness in our pastors, our business leaders, and how you can solve loneliness in their lives and in the lives of your fellow seniors who are struggling with loneliness. Bruce, we've spent the first half of today's show talking about pastor loneliness and defining it in business loneliness. Actually, we briefed the pastor loneliness, jumped into business owner loneliness, both as business owners and then when they retire. And I want to get practical in this last segment of this last part of the 3 series. Donny Vanker gave us all kinds of great information from Life Action. I want to get very specific. How can seniors help eliminate loneliness in seniors? What are some things you think?
Well, the first thing is to be present. To be present in your own life, to be present in the lives of the people that are the closest to you, and then to reach out to be present in the lives of others. And so what does that look like? We have a couple that we're close to, and she is on her last hours before she passes on to be with the Lord. And so to be present in her life during these last stages, not to withdraw, not to say, well, she's in her last stages, I'm going to leave her alone. No, to be able to be present in ways that will make a difference for her in these last hours, days and hours of her life. To be present in the life of her husband, who is now going to go into a whole new, after their 50 years of marriage. And so the whole idea of being present for others is really a foundational idea. In order to be present, it means you need to be flexible. In order to be flexible, it means that you need to be willing to change perhaps how you think, to change perhaps what you say, perhaps to change how you contribute, whether it be in money or time to them. But you need to have that flexibility in order to change, in order to be present.
And I think it's, as we talk about the 3 different phases of retirement, loneliness can happen in any one of those 3 phases. I really think we just need to be, if we're staying in touch with our friends, and let's just say you're just staying in touch with people in your small group, because there's lonely people right in your church. Find out what their needs are. Some of those people, they don't like to go out, or maybe they can't drive anymore, or maybe they're just worried about money. Whatever it is, just go hang out with them. eliminate loneliness. When you start to put somebody else first, it eliminates any loneliness in your life. As you said in the podcast a couple of podcasts ago, meaning and purpose drives out loneliness. And when you've got meaning and purpose in your day, hey, I'm going to go visit Wilma or Betty. I'm going to go, I'm not talking about the Flintstones, but you can buy, they're getting old. The Flintstones are probably in their 80s now too. But you're going to, Ricky and Lucy, you're going to go see them or whatever it may be. Just, it gives you meaning and purpose. Bruce, what can the seniors do specifically? We've talked about some ideas to drive out loneliness in the pastors of their local church. And maybe they're pastors of the local church that they don't go to. Like in a town like I live in, 2,200 people, 15 churches. There's some pastors here that pastor churches of 10 or 15 people. How can we help?
Well, I know that one example is that some time ago there was a church that we passed on our way to our church. And I said to Judy, I said, we should go visit them sometime. And so a number of weeks ago, we took off a Sunday from our church and went and visited that church. And the pastor was happy to see some strange faces, and we were able to connect with them. And I said to him as we're leaving, I said, would you be open to just going to lunch with me and just having a conversation sometime in the next week or two? And man, you should have seen his face light up. He said, oh, that would be great. We had a conversation. We went to a Vietnamese restaurant and had some Vietnamese food. And we sat and talked for about an hour and a half. And it just the opportunity for him to be able to be with someone who didn't have an agenda, who he didn't know, and probably wasn't, based on what I told him, wasn't going to negatively impact anything he was doing, and maybe positively impact. So it's so simple to do, to be able to extend that cup of cold water, that hand of friendship, and that openness, and to be present, and to be a listening ear.
There's we talked about a couple of things. I went to the practical in this conversation, on the last podcast. If your pastor happens to be younger and has a family, you as seniors can just offer to help with kids.
Such a great idea. Yeah. How can we just give you some space?
Yeah.
That in fact for you and your wife, for you just to reflect and think, or just to be able to set stuff aside.
Well, a lot of times pastors move away from their families, so they don't have mom and dad or mother-in-law and father-in-law around to do some of that. And so you can kind of be adopted grandparents for them. That's a huge thing. Giving them a date night, letting the kids spend the night at your house so that mom and dad can have their own house. That's a huge thing. But let's say your pastor happens to be a little older and their kids are grown and gone, and you're a younger person, maybe you're in your 50s or 60s as a senior and you're handy. Offer your services to your pastor to help them with something around their house. Everybody has something that's broken that needs to be fixed. Everybody. Bruce, what's broken in your house that I can fly to Colorado Springs and help with? What needs help?
I've got, 1, 2, 3. I've got 4 uplights on my house and my garage that are out right now.
And Judy used to climb the ladder.
Kind of high, and it's tough to get up there, so you got to get on a ladder to change those dumb lights.
Yeah, and Judy doesn't climb ladders anymore. I know she used to be the one climbing the ladders.
Not anymore.
Right.
And
all right.
And so there's a real life issue.
Changing light bulbs. Those stupid recessed lights are so hard. My parents always had trouble with those. I always did the light bulbs once a year, just in case. And then I changed all the batteries in the smoke detectors. Another thing you could do, just change the batteries in the smoke detectors every year, because they're going to go out in the middle of the night if you don't. That's just what they do. All right, let's finish up the conversation, Bruce, about what can seniors do to eliminate loneliness and business leaders in their community. Specifically, what can our former business leader seniors do in the lives of business leaders in their community to eliminate loneliness?
Well, when we do what it is that God has prepared us to do, experientially, emotionally, whatever it may be, through the lifetime that we've had, understanding what that preparation is, and then asking the question, what can I do with that preparation to be able to support others, or to be able to bring renewal to others of the church, and to bring growth, so that those of us that come out of a business background, we want to see something happen. So to be able to provide the opportunity for those experiences to be able to help make something happen for someone, for someone who is, for the homeless, for the widows, for the orphans, for your neighbor, for your friend. I got a friend in Michigan, not anywhere near Life Action. We've been friends for 70 years.
That's a long time.
When I was 10. I first met him when I was 10. And he's transitioning. He's got a difficult transition time ahead of him for a whole variety of reasons. And I just simply call him and saying, "Hey, George, what would you like to talk about, my friend?" And we have built trust over this time. And so invariably when I say that, he just, has a place to unload that. Even though we're 1,000 miles apart, we can do that. Some version of that, to be able to ask someone to help with a conversation, to say, what are the top 3 things that really needs some serious prayer or needs some serious thought? Everybody's got them. Everybody's got 3. And so asking that question, and in a way which says, and I'm open to hearing what it is that you have to say, which will help them find that meaning and purpose, and will also give you that. So that mentoring that I'm taught, I think that describes.
And there's so much wisdom pent up inside of retired seniors who were business owners or business leaders. We need to pass that information on. Invest your life in somebody that's younger than you, that needs somebody that it doesn't have an agenda, but they can share confidence with, because as well as they know that if you're a former business leader, they're neglecting their marriage too, just like you did. And how do you avoid that stuff? How do you keep it right? Bruce, great conversation about how do we use seniors to eliminate the loneliness in seniors and in pastors and in business leaders. Really a fantastic, and again, I still think you should set up the RJFFA, the Retired Jesus Followers, Jesus Following Folks of America. I think that's a new association. It'll be as big as AARP, I'm sure.
Well, I tell you what, those are ideas that become germs, that become a prayer idea, and as God will bless it, that will happen.
I thought you were going to say germs that'll become a plague. Fantastic one, Bruce. Love that. You've been listening to I Retire for Him with your host, Jim Brangenberg, and of course, the founder of the Retirement Reformation, Bruce Brynsma. Please check us out online. Get involved with what we're doing, retirementreformation.org. Host an event at your local church, an Oxygen for Life event, or some of these other events that we do. Do your small group around the Retirement Reformation curriculum. Read our books. Use them to implement meaning and purpose in your life as a retiree, so that you can journey with Bruce and I from retirement to reformation, and we can all say together, I retire for Him.
I retire for Him.
Thanks for listening to I Retire for Him with your hosts Jim and Martha Brangenberg and Retirement Reformation founder Bruce Brynsma. I Retire for Him is the mouthpiece of the Retirement Reformation. Most Christians tend to follow the world's pattern of rest and self-pampering during retirement. However, in your retirement, you can be focused on God's unique call to love, serve, and help others. This can be your best season of life if you take advantage of a life's worth of knowledge and experience and combine it with a greater freedom of time and money and invest it all in the generations both preceding and following you. The Retirement Reformation is encouraging Christians to find and follow God's call in all seasons and aspects of life, especially in retirement. Take time to sign the manifesto at retirementreformation.org and explore the wealth of resources available on our site. Join this movement of God and journey from retirement to reformation so you can say, I retire for Him. Go to retirementreformation.org.